This year we have hosted some amazing speakers, but today we bring it home. And the stories that we will be telling, they live within these walls. Each time we come into this room, we are quietly greeted by 4 women whose portraits line the north wall. They're watching us today, as they always have. They are silent witnesses to the comings and goings within these rooms. Their stories were never hidden. They remain in letters, in files, and in scrapbooks, just waiting to be rediscovered. It's the threads that connect us to them today. So it is out of respect, gratitude, and admiration I have bestowed upon them the honorary title Guardians of the Guild. Their story begins in 1892 with the founding of the Guild, and it continues through their lasting commitment to supporting women on this campus today. Let's begin. She was vivacious, charming, witty, and immensely talented. In her own words, she possessed a tremendous ardor for living. Nothing could extinguish it. It is little wonder that she had friends in every walk of life, and that she came to be known as Evanston's First Lady. That lady was Cornelia Gray Lunt. Born in 1843, daughter of Orrington Lunt, one of the founders of Northwestern. She was also the niece of John Evans, another university founder, and the man for whom Evanston is named. So by birth alone, she could have claimed the title of First Lady. But it was the story of her life. Active, generous, and engaged, that earned it again and again. She lived most of her life at Anchorfast, the spacious Lunt homestead over at 1742 Judson Avenue, built by her father after the Great Chicago Fire. And over the years, Anchorfast became a center of remarkable hospitality. Through its doors, past Nobel Prize winners, distinguished scholars, artists of international renown, as well as the poor, the struggling, and the not yet famous. It was said that all whose lives Cornelia touched were better for it. So deeply were they influenced by her zest and love of life. In personal reminiscences read to the Guild in 1925, Miss Lunt recalled her first voyage abroad on a sailing vessel, visiting the White House with her father as guests of President Lincoln, and moving to Evanston after the Chicago Fire. Her father contributed $50,000 to build Northwestern University, and later, Cornelia herself served as a university trustee. And when the Guild outgrew its capacity of members' homes, it was Miss Lunt who took the initiative to secure larger quarters in Lunt Library. A delightful glimpse of her personality comes from journalist and radio personality Alexander Woolcott of The New Yorker. Now, Cornelia arranged a meeting between Woolcott and a 19-year-old aspiring actor friend of hers. His name was Orson Welles. The meeting took place in Miss Lunt's hotel sitting room, and Wolcott wrote, "I glanced around the sitting room, and although Miss Lunt had only been in town for 3 or 4 days, the room was in glorious disorder. There were flowers everywhere and freshly opened boxes of candy. The latest American and English magazines were strewn about, together with concert and theater programs. From a half-open Brentano's package, a cascade of books tumbled across the table. Here and there on the desk and the mantelpiece were framed photographs belonging to one who obviously converted her household gods into traveling companions." Aside from her role as patron of the arts and the gracious hostess of Anchorfast, Cornelia Lunt made lasting contributions to Evanston and Chicago. She helped bring Peter Lutkin to Northwestern's music department. She became the first president of the University Guild, fostering strong ties between the university and the community in its early years. And with a purse well supplied by her father, she joined Bertha Palmer and other Guild members at the close of the Columbian Expedition to purchase works of art, thus launching the Guild's art collection. She served as a trustee of Northwestern from 1899 to 1920. A few years before her death in 1934, she wrote these words in a book of reminiscences for her niece, Regina. "It has been good to live. I love it. Very early, a longing came to me, not to be merely a passenger, but one of the crew of the great ship we call the world. It was not for me to reign or serve mightily. Life never became spectacular or severe, but sheltered, joyous, confident, with a message of love I wish I could pass on. The lessons I have learned are comforting, that the trees, the flowers, the hills, the mountains, and the oceans are gifts of heaven in sight, and above all, that loving words are heaven's own birthday gifts to the world as we speak them. It is for us to make every day a birthday of delight, a Christmas of joy." Signed, your aunt, Cornelia Gray Lunt. Her portrait was painted by Henry Salem Hubbell, the American Impressionist, whose subjects included Presidents Herbert Hoover and Franklin Roosevelt, and his work resides in museums around the world. And fittingly, the woman known as Evanston's First Lady is remembered not only in paint, but in the lives that she enriched and the institutions that she strengthened and the spirit of joy she so generously shared. Let's meet Mary Ross Potter, Northwestern's Dean of Women from 1904 to 1924. Mary was born in Bloomington, Illinois, 1871. She studied at Illinois Wesleyan University before graduating from Northwestern. She went on to earn a master's degree from Boston and later continued her studies in Rome and Geneva. A very impressive course of preparation for a young woman of her era. In 1905, Mary Potter returned to Northwestern as Dean of Women. She served in that role for 20 years and then remained another 5 as counselor to women. Over those 25 years, she became a steady and an influential presence on this campus. Dean Potter was also deeply engaged beyond the university. She belonged to organizations such as the American Association of University Women, the Evanston League of Women Voters, the University Guild, the University Circle, and she valued these connections. From each meeting that she attended, she brought back to this campus the best and most current thinking about education. But her greatest devotion was to her students. She counseled young women about their rightful place in a rapidly changing world. She inaugurated vocational talks on campus, and she arranged for the prominent speakers to introduce women to the emerging professional fields. She understood that education was not only intellectual, but practical. She was also mindful of students' physical well-being. And under her leadership, medical services for women were opened on this campus. She championed better housing and even traveled to other universities to study successful dormitory models. Creating hospitable spaces for women to gather really mattered to her. During the winter months, the University Guild opened their rooms for the women students to meet between the classes, always, as the records note, under a proper caretaker. And yet, while she embraced progress, Dean Potter also held firmly to standards of conduct. We were entering the roaring 20s. The tango was sweeping the nation. The campus magazines and advertisements hinted that perfume might serve as a weapon of attraction at the dances and the teas. In a 1960 farewell letter, retiring Dean Claudine Mason recalled her predecessor with affection. She wrote that when she herself became dean, she remembered Miss Potter's conservative ways, and with a smile, she recalled that Dean Potter had suggested that a certain perfume not be used because it inflamed young men. By that very evening, not a bottle of it could be found downtown Evanston. Dean Potter also worked closely with the University Guild. She frequently invited 30 or 40 of her students to a Guild program that would be tailored to their interests. She borrowed paintings from the Guild's collection to display in public rooms across the campus. After one of her talks advocating classes in physical education, domestic science, and fine arts, the entire Guild audience rose to greet and congratulate her on her stature as a faculty member. Even after retiring as dean, she remained counselor to women and an active Guild member, later serving on the board. When the Guild's art collection had to be moved from Lunt Library, it was Mary Potter who cataloged, labeled, and carefully packed each piece. The portrait we hold in our collection was a gift from more than 250 women whose names were inscribed in a book of remembrance presented to her in 1931 upon her departure from the university. The artist, Charles Sneed Williams, is known for his portraits of English royalty and prominent Americans, including 2 portraits of Abraham Lincoln. Mary Ross Potter died in 1959, and she's buried in Bloomington, Illinois. For 25 years and long after, she helped shape not only the education of women at Northwestern, but the character of the campus itself. Anna Miller met Walter Dill Scott when they were both freshmen at Northwestern. They graduated in 1895, married soon after, and then traveled to Germany to pursue advanced degrees. Walter Scott went on to gain international recognition as a pioneer in advertising and business psychology, and as a leader in bringing mental testing into wide use in the Army, industry, and education. He was elected president of Northwestern in 1920 and served until 1939. Anna Scott's contributions were equally significant. In 1914, she published 2 volumes of poetry for children, A Year with the Fairies and Flower Babies, and continued to write magazine articles, short stories throughout her life. When her husband assumed the presidency, Anna turned her energies towards the Northwestern and Evanston communities, becoming active in the University Guild, the University Circle, the Evanston Garden Club, and First Presbyterian Church. Guild scrapbooks from the years 1924 to 1928 vividly document Anna's leadership and engagement. The annual report from 1924 to 1925 alone reads like a full social calendar. That year's fall lunch, held over at the Orrington Hotel, drew 240 members, with 30 more turned away due to lack of space. President and Mrs. Walter Dill Scott were the guests of honor. Programs that year included a November gathering at Harris Hall, where Miss Cornelia Lunt presented readings from her sketches and reminiscences, accompanied by an exhibition from the Guild Art Collection. In December, holiday teas were hosted in 4 members' homes for the wives of faculty and trustees, with Anna Scott presiding over one of the tea tables. The spring brought a Chinese-themed tea and art exhibition, again at Harris Hall, followed by a play presented by the School of Speech in April and a closing musical in May. Throughout these years, Anna Scott remained an active and generous presence on the Guild board. Beyond her civic and cultural leadership, Anna Scott and her husband left an enduring mark on Northwestern's physical landscape. Walter Scott's administration oversaw the construction of major facilities, including student housing, particularly for women, Deering Library, and Dyke Stadium. When the Scotts retired in 1940, the university honored them both with the dedication of Scott Hall. Scott Hall was envisioned as a center for student life, offering meeting space, quiet study areas, a woman's lounge for the commuting students, and after 50 years of Guild fundraising, a permanent home for the Guild and its art collection. The sunken garden to the west of this building was dedicated in Anna Scott's honor. A lover of nature and gardens, she often expressed these passions in her poetry. Anna Scott also wrote a prayer for Scott Hall, which was read at this building's dedication. And it still hangs over here on the north wall, right near her portrait. In recognition of her lifelong service, Northwestern awarded Anna Scott an honorary Doctor of Laws degree in 1952. In 1961, the university celebrated her 90th birthday with a tea attended by more than 500 alumni, university officials, former classmates, Guild members, friends, and family. Anna Scott died in Wilmette in 1966, survived by her 2 sons, 3 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. Her life reflects a legacy of literary creativity, civic leadership, and lasting devotion to Northwestern. In 1993, her grandson Jack wrote a remembrance to his brother, his younger brother, Wally, recalling their grandmother with admiration. What a woman. It's too bad her life was never written. It would have been enthralling. He remembered Anna as a philosopher, a scholar, an author, a songwriter, a devoted partner to Walter Dill, and a warm and witty grandmother. She had a gift for people, remembering names, entertaining distinguished guests like Herbert Hoover, and visiting dignitaries, and helping make her husband so well regarded. Even her quirks were memorable. Once, after losing the key to her room at the North Shore Hotel, she crawled through the transom above the door so she would not be embarrassed to tell the main desk. In short, she really was remarkable, and she left a lasting legacy. Her portrait was painted by her artist friend, Anna Lynch, a graduate of the Art Institute of Chicago and Académie Julian of Paris. During her lifetime, Lynch painted more than 400 oil portraits, and her miniatures were painted on ivory. Her work was exhibited in leading galleries across the United States. Bernice Johannsen Miller was 40 years old when she arrived on campus with her husband, James Roscoe Rocky Miller, as he was inaugurated the 12th president of Northwestern. Now, Roscoe Miller was no newcomer. He had already served as dean of the medical school since 1941 and had been on the faculty before that. But the presidency placed both of them, not just him, at the very center of university life. Bernice was a graduate of the University of Utah. She majored in French and she minored in political science. She and Roscoe met there as students, and they married in 1929. That partnership, formed in college, would become one of the defining partnerships in Northwestern's history. From the very beginning of their tenure, Bernice became known for her graciousness and her hospitality. Between 1949 and 1974, she welcomed thousands of students, faculty, alumni, traveling, visiting dignitaries into that presidential home. For 25 years, she was known as the university's first lady. But that title was more than ceremonial. She was not simply present. She was engaged, attentive, and steady. While President Miller is credited with expanding the campus and significantly increasing the faculty, he himself made it clear that it was never a one-person decision or a one-person effort. In the summer of 1974 issue of the Northwestern Report, when asked about accepting the presidency, he said, "We did a lot of talking and a lot of thinking about it. We took it, and we never regretted it." The provost at the time later said that Bernice and Rocky, they were a team. She was always there, taking an active interest in the university. They were an integral unit in the running of the university. And that unity was tested. During the late 1960s, as unrest over the Vietnam War spread across campuses nationwide, Northwestern faced its own period of tension and protest. Demonstrators came to the presidential home. Eggs were thrown. Years later, Bernice reflected on that time. She said, "That was the most rugged time. People came up to the house and they would throw eggs. But it was happening all over the country. We were no different. We weathered it." There is something revealing in that word, weathered. Not fought, not conquered, weathered. It suggests steadiness, endurance, and perspective. In 1974, after 4 additional years as chancellor, Roscoe Miller retired in recognition of her own decades of service. The university awarded Bernice Miller an honorary doctorate. It was a formal acknowledgement of what everyone already understood. She had been a partner in leadership. When her husband died in 1977, Bernice did not step away from the university. Instead, she continued the traditions that she long nurtured. She hosted spring receptions for students, winter gatherings for the Christmas carolers, and events for the faculty and administrators' families. She once said, "If there's something to do, I want to do it." That simple sentence may capture her best, not seeking recognition, not seeking authority, simply wanting to serve. Bernice and Roscoe had 3 children, Roxy Pepper, Jacqueline James, and Randall Miller. And all 3 graduated from Northwestern. Bernice took great pride in that. The university was not just an institution to her, it was home. In April 1975, the Daily Northwestern reported the planting of 40,000 purple flowers at the corner of Chicago Avenue and Sheridan Road. The beds were funded by her daughter, Roxy, and son-in-law, Richard Pepper, along with the faculty and staff wives and friends. Another 10,000 flowers were planted over at the Alumni Center on Judson Avenue, and 2 more east of Kresge Hall. It really is a fitting image, thousands of blooms planted quietly but transforming the landscape. Bernice Miller died at her home in Barrington, Illinois, August 1998, at the age of 93. She had been widowed for more than 20 years, and she was survived by her 3 children. Her portrait, painted in 1949 by Winnetka artist Herman Peterson, captures her at the very beginning of her years as First Lady. Peterson, a 20th century portraitist and impressionist landscape painter, also painted several Northwestern professors. In her portrait, we see composure, poise, a quiet confidence. And perhaps that is how she is best remembered. Not as someone who sought the spotlight, but as someone who stood beside it, steady, gracious, enduring, a partner in one of the most transformative eras in Northwestern's history. There is a quote from the book written by Oscar Hammerstein from the musical Carousel. It goes, "As long as there's one person on earth who remembers you, it isn't over." And I suggest that as we go forward, we say their names so often that their friends in heaven will tap them on the shoulder and they will say, "They're talking about you again."